Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Bruce Goodman, who endowed the Read in Color Little Free Library at Jewish Family Service of St. Paul. We talk about how this initiative came into existence, his recovery from trauma, and the importance of counseling on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Bruce Goodman, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Really excited to talk to you. You are the, I don't know, say creator, but I guess the endower is probably the correct term of the Bruce Goodman Read in Color Little Free Library initiative at Jewish Family Service in St. Paul. And, you know, when I was reading about the initiative, it sounded really interesting and very different to me. I'm wondering if you could sort of go in depth a little bit into what that Little Free Library is and what the genesis of it was.
Thank you. The genesis of it was an incident which is a while back in early 2021 when I was walking through the Skyway early in the morning, carrying a briefcase, and I had my cell phone on my holster on my belt, and I was mugged. I didn't see it coming. It probably happened in 60 seconds, and I felt hands on me. And I don't remember anything else really about the assault. I did get turned around and fell forward with my arms outstretched because of what I was carrying, and injured my shoulder. And I'll say angels showed up. In terms of mother and daughter visiting from Seattle. And then other help, I went to urgent care, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
And I, as a board member of JFS, I called Ruth Hampton Olcon, who's the CEO, and she suggested I talk to Tara Burns, a therapist in the community support program. And that was a special program that actually during the pandemic people could do. They have 3 sessions. She was very helpful. She made sure I felt protected and taking precautions. And then she asked me, what does empathy mean to you? And my eyes rolled, and I said, really?
I mean, I can only imagine that given what the trauma you're recovering from, empathy is probably not at that stage the first thing that comes to mind.
No. And, I mean, I can look back at it now. And you can't just flip a switch and be empathetic, and it takes a while. You know, can you forgive the person?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, given who I am as a person, much of my background was in public service,
Okay,
in government education, and public policy. So, yes, I could at least intellectually do that. And so that empathy changed the framework of what I was looking at.
I think intellectually, that sort of tracks, right? Like intellectually, like you understand the concept, but I would think the practice of being empathetic after that might be a little harder to pull off. Was it?
Exactly. So the needle didn't move very much.
Which
At
is
that point,
which feels totally reasonable to me. Like that feels very valid.
until, and I was wearing a sling at this point on my arm, and people would ask me, what happened? And the cameras in that location were not working. So I never saw the person. And they made assumptions about the race of the person. Was the person black? Um, that was my call to action that moved the needle. It's not the message I wanted to put out to the universe, and it wasn't me. So the needle moved, and I went back to Ruth Hampton Ocon and Jody Salzman, who's the community engagement manager at JFS. We had lunch, and I said, you know, what can I do? What can I donate for to do something to address racial and social justice? And the next day they came back with Read and Color Little Free Library. I had never heard of it,
Okay.
but
No, I mean I hadn't either until until I had heard about this program at JFS. Obviously, little free libraries. I mean, walk around your neighborhood. There's probably a handful of them, people who have them up in their yards. But the read in color piece of it, is that unique to what JFS is doing, or is that part of the little free library program in general?
the Little Free Library is headquartered in St. Paul. I
Okay.
didn't know that either. They're national and I think international. After the murder of George Floyd in 2020, they wanted to do something, and they put together a suggested reading list of books for all ages to address racial and social injustice and celebrate BIPOC, LGBTQ, and other marginalized voices.
Mm-hmm.
And the really nice thing about it is that in children's books, and you know, I wasn't aware of this, only 25% depict children that aren't white.
Mm-hmm.
So that was their commitment. And this aligned with JFS demographics and a commitment to DEI. For demographics in 2022, I think I'm accurate, 40% of clients that self-reported were people of color, 90% are low income,
Wow.
and 51% are non-Jewish. And so I have to give credit to JFS for coming up with the idea.
Right.
So that was great. And of course, Jewish values really like the power of education, the power of books, and everybody has since said, including me, teachers, books change their lives.
Yeah.
And the goal, of course, and including mine, is that you know, we're doing something for diversity and inclusion and community dialogue. So this intersection allowed this to happen without me being mugged, and I don't recommend it. And what they wanted but couldn't fund, this would not have happened. And I can look back at it now. The incident of trauma, getting professional counseling, then by my choice, using empathy to do good works pulled me through trauma and to do something positive. So I can thank JFS that without counseling, which is a good message, I never would have made it out of trauma.
So the program was launched almost a year ago to the actual almost 11 months ago as you and I are speaking now, but it was September 11th, 2022 was when the ribbon cutting was held. What kind of impact has been reported to you as sort of the funder of the program about its success or its reach so far in these first 11 months?
I thought about that for this interview.
Okay.
And for the ribbon cutting ceremony, it's the first time I've cut a ribbon, and they had cake, so I showed up.
Oh, sure.
There's a little free library box outside on purpose of JFS facing West 7th Street, which is a statement of a commitment to the neighborhood. And the library box itself was built by volunteers with artwork donated by a local artist. And there's books that are taken out there. So it's really about community building. There have been a number of programs. The first one was Carolyn Holbrook, who founded and co-edited a book, We Are Meant to Rise, which again was in response to the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. And there have been other adult books. Book clubs are forming.
But I think the idea that there are sort of book clubs forming and conversations happening around the topics and the books that are part of this program, I think speaks to the potential future growth of it. Because, you know, as a book goes through one circle of people and they recommend it to a different, you know, to other friends, and that's sort of how these things spread through the, you know, word of mouth. If not the Little Free Library specifically at JFS, the books and the ideas that are part of it are reaching a larger audience.
Right, and in the Read and Color program, there's nothing about programming. And programming happens both at JFS, it's happened at Talmud Torah at that time.
Yeah.
It will be going into, I believe, Mississippi Market.
Oh, okay.
The CEO is talking to the association director of West 7th Street. So if I didn't say this, it needs to be assessed as an emerging program.
Sure.
Which in a sense is a model and framework. The director of Little Free Library was at the ribbon cutting. She actually just brought more books there.
That's great.
So we're really out into the community.
That's great. And, you know, the other thing is, you know, I asked the question, but, like, I also recognize that measuring an impact of a program like this after only 11 months, I mean, to me at least, I'm no statistician, but that just doesn't feel like enough of a sample size to really have to be able to fully grasp the scope of both what it's been and what it could be and sort of the future prospects.
Right, it is evolving. It's within the community engagement department. Staff are dedicated to this. They're very methodical, innovative. They have a list of events that's occurring. So that to me means, okay, it's successful.
And I mean, it's great that this was a program that really does seem like it spoke to the kind of impact you were hoping to make in the community and for yourself in terms of your own healing from this. That it really seemed to be a perfect match.
It was, and I'm a different person today because of what happened. And of course, with the books, you hope there are conversations in the community
Right.
that will create change, that will make that, a lot of us have been complacent. We believe that social change is needed. It's my hope that people will get off the sidelines, get out of their comfort zone, and even do simple things like get these books, talk to others in the community, get involved with JFS or African American organization, and I'm now looking at some of those to see what my next step is. Personally, I have often been uncomfortable talking about complicated conflict issues if I don't have the right words. Empathy and this program now are a starting point for me where I feel comfortable in doing something about racial and social injustice. And I've also, and I'm gathering my thoughts because in the last 6 months I've gone through a lot of changes. And I just mentioned one about my own self-discovery of who I am.
Yeah.
And I also realize that I have often just made a statement of "you're wrong," which automatically cuts off
Yeah.
future conversations. I now try to, and practice, and need to continue to practice, creating a shared experience. Because if you understand your narrative, you can change it with new information and rewrite the story to have the life you want to live and become the person you want to be. So that's important to me. I was just up in Ely, Minnesota last week, which is beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Out of my comfort zone, really. And I have a friend, Will Steger, up there, who's an explorer. And I was at his center, and we were sitting around a rustic table in the outdoors. Will, a college student, two others in their 20s, and they're building cabins and so forth. And I brought up that I had this interview with you today, and I hadn't crystallized my thoughts. And in the Great North Woods, for people who had never heard of this program, and we're not Jewish, but sustainable in everything they were doing with so forth, is that we were talking about empathy and forgiveness. And one young gentleman, and I learned from listening to other people, said forgiveness is finding grace in ungracefulness, and it opens up a space where by listening we can mediate. And what he liked about what I did and what forgiveness is instead of demonizing the other person or the opposition as wrong, we can try to understand each other and create something new. So I'm really impressed by young people. So I'm 71, and let's just say he's 21 or so. There's what is that, a 50-year difference?
Yeah.
So I'm impressed.
Well, it's good that the next generations have such a way of looking at things that sort of can help really all of us, I think. But certainly, I mean, it obviously had a big impact on you and helped you crystallize your thoughts a bit and what it all means.
Yeah, and I have to give the board of JFS a lot of credit, and staff. They have a commitment with the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. A consultant has been working with staff on hiring and especially creating a culture that's welcoming to people of different color. And the board is now looking at diversifying itself and community building. So the intersection of all this, and with the little Read and Color Little Free Library, is taking on a life of its own.
That's great.
And so that's great. Yeah, thanks.
So you mentioned before we started recording that you just rotated off the JFS board. You were on the board when this incident happened and the program itself launched. What was it that led you to JFS to be on the board in the first place? How did you initially get connected?
I live in the western suburbs, which I like. I was raised in St. Paul. My family and I were congregants at Mount Zion Temple.
Okay.
And I had nostalgia, 2 or 3 years ago for St. Paul. So I wanted to reconnect.
Yeah.
And I have a special place in my heart for caregivers and caregiving. And they have great programming at JFS.
Yep.
So I joined a committee, then I got on the board. I've been on the finance, development, and executive committees. And so that's why I joined JFS.
Okay. As good a reason, I mean, as good a reasons as any. Sometimes it is that simple.
Yeah.
It's a great agency. It's got great leadership. I'm a big fan of Ruth, and what the work she's done there since she's come on board. And she's, I know, a fan of Jew folks, so I hear from her all the time, which is great. So, it's a great organization, and I mean, both. We have two great Jewish family service organizations in the Twin Cities.
Correct, and my parents have an endowment at they're passed away, blessed their memory, and they have an endowment at Jewish Family Children's Service, and I know Jerry Halper and I know Jerry Waldman.
Yep.
So I think that's another reason I wanted to stay within that context.
Yeah.
We've always had a special place in our hearts for those organizations. I owe you a special thanks because once you called me, I wasn't sure how to prepare for the interview, but I prepared for the interview first by walking back to the location where I was mugged.
Oh.
I may have done, I don't know if I've been back there before, but I went back intentionally. I was apprehensive. I was looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I realized, because I've had offices downtown, that a lot more people are downtown, enjoying downtown. And I realized that was okay, that a new normal, and that is, I am not immune from what's going on in the community. I have a responsibility and a call to action to do something. But because of you, I went back there and I completed the final leg of my healing journey. So thank you.
I'm speechless. I mean, thank you for saying that. That is lovely. And I'm glad my request didn't cause the trauma to reopen, certainly. But I'm happy that you're feeling like you're in a place that you could go back there and not be re-traumatized by just being in that stretch of Skyway downtown.
I've come a long way with a little help from my friends.
Listen, therapy is good and important, and counseling, all like that is important work that people do that JFS and JFCS offer. And, hopefully people, will listen to this, and if they didn't know before, know now to make the call and try to find the help if they need it for what is whatever might be going on in their lives. And it's also okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to ask for help when we need it.
That's probably the most important message today.
Yeah. And we will have links to the JFS and, of course, JFCS as well for people who are more Western suburban inclined, but where they can find out about the counseling services of both family service agencies, and of course we'll have a link to the Bruce Goodman Read in Color, a little free library at JFS, which is just such a cool initiative, and I'm glad that it's taking off, and I can't wait to see where it goes and how it stretches out into the community. Because JFS is such an important part of the West 7th community, which is such a vibrant stretch of St. Paul, connecting, the Highland, more traditionally Jewish, I'm using air quotes on a audio medium, so you'll just have to trust me, Jewish community of Highland with the sort of greater and into downtown St. Paul. It is such a vibrant area, and JFS plays an important role in it. Well, Bruce, last couple questions, and we'll let you get out of here. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Hanukkah.
Okay. How come?
Because when we were young, lighting the candles, saying the prayer, getting presents.
Presents are fun.
And I realized how close our family was and how we supported each other. And I haven't thought about that for a long time.
Okay. And what's your favorite Jewish food?
Matzo ball soup, which has too much salt.
But that's how it's tasty. Yeah, look, everything in moderation, right?
Right.
Anyone's soup in particular?
Anyone's soup?
And no, is there a particular establishment or family recipe or somebody make it for you that you're like, okay, this is the one?
The Lincoln Dell, if you go back in time,
Okay.
now Crossroad Deli.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Well, Bruce Goodman, thank you so much. I really appreciate your willingness to talk with me about clearly some difficult and unfortunate topics, but your growth and your healing from it, I think, is inspirational, as well as this program you started at JFS, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.